Today we're going to talk about upper lips. So buckle up, it's going to be an interesting one. The year was 2015 or 2016, and the filming of a movie that would come out in 2017 was underway, and that movie was The Justice League. The Justice League is a DC Comics franchise that brought together all of the major DC Comics superheroes. You have Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, Aquaman, etc. And the person that we are particularly interested in for the purpose of this video is Superman, played by Henry Cavill. I know nothing about the filming of Justice League, except for one little detail that took the internet by storm. You see, oftentimes movies will complete filming and then realize that there are certain things that they need to go back and refilm or certain additional pieces of footage that they need. These are often referred to as pickups, I believe. And the Justice League had a particularly famous pickup. The reason this pickup was so infamous was because Henry Cavill's next project was Mission Impossible Fallout. And if you take a look at him from the promotional materials of that film, you're going to notice one particularly prominent difference between his character in that movie and the Man of Steel. And that difference is entirely focused around his upper lip. We spoiled that earlier. He had a mustache in that movie. And so when he had to go back to film pickups for Justice League, he was contractually obligated to keep that mustache for fear of slowing down the production on the Mission Impossible movie that he was in. The solution that the Hollywood studio came up with was to spend an incredible amount of time and energy to use computer graphics to remove his mustache. And needless to say, the reason that this became an internet phenomenon is they did a piss poor job. The final result, which I will show also up here, was pretty uncanny. And when I say uncanny, I am referring to what is called the uncanny valley, which is when computer graphics are good, but still lack some of those flourishes to make them realistic. And you can't really put your finger on it, but there's some uncanny divide between reality and the computer graphics. And in a lot of ways, it is more upsetting than just pure computer graphics. As the internet got wind of this ridiculousness perpetrated by the studio that created Justice League, everybody kind of piled on. Henry Cavill was an incredible sport and filmed some really kind of funny, humorous videos himself about it. My absolute favorite was Ryan Reynolds, who did, I believe, an aviation gin spot. That's a gin company that Ryan Reynolds owns, about it, where he lifted a cup to his face, and when he took it down, his mustache was replaced by this quivering blob that shifted back and forth in front of his face. All in all, it was a lot of funniness at the expense of a studio that could absolutely take it. But what you might be wondering, and fairly so, is why am I talking about it right now? Well, this is the Monday after my last video went live. And that video, you might have noticed, was a little light on graphics. And part of that is an intentional shift. I think that now that I have my new camera and my setup is starting to coalesce, I want to refine my style, I think, and start experimenting with different levels of graphics, trying to make the few graphics that I include higher quality, but this is a digression. The main reason is that I spent about 6 hours, and that is not an exaggeration. We're talking from about 11:30 a.m. to about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, doing nothing but removing a zit from my upper lip through the entire 15 minutes of footage. It was a painstaking process. And before we kind of jump to conclusions about the fact that I am incredibly vain or things like that, it is not the reason that I removed the blemish. The blemish was unsightly, but just to show that I'm not too proud, I'll bring up a picture of me in the unedited form and maybe do a side and side with the edited form. The reason that I wanted to remove the blemish is that I want to learn film editing and all of the technologies associated with it. My background is technology. I feel like I should have the ability to learn and master even some of these more complicated procedures. And this seemed like the perfect opportunity for me to learn how to do what is a relatively common thing in the world of the film industry, which is to do some very light computer graphics in hopes of disguising something or changing something or modifying something. And there are two main components that are used in doing this. So one is I had to get good at tracking. And tracking is the act of picking some entity in the frame that is moving and using the software to identify features of it that it can then track frame to frame to frame and create kind of a path of that thing through the space that you can then associate with something else. And then the other was using masks and blending to grab a different piece of my skin that wasn't blemished, move it, and then attach it to the tracker so that little piece of skin moved around naturally and blended into my skin. If I succeeded, which based on my own viewing of it, I think I did, hopefully no one will notice the fact that my upper lip was modified. And I think that's a really interesting challenge to have undertook. It took an incredible amount of time. I learned a lot. One of the, I think, most humorous things that I learned from that process was figuring out what is trackable and what isn't. Generally speaking, if you're doing kind of commercial level tracking, like if you've ever seen people in motion cap suits, they'll have like a green suit with white ping pong balls all over it, right? And those are meant to be very visually distinct so that a computer can watch where they go and keep track of the movements of their body. In other cases, say computer vision and robotics, there'll be tiny stickers that have things that look like QR codes, block patterns of light and dark high contrast that are very easy for the computer to see. Same general concept. You want to create something that is distinct from the environment that is very easy for a computer to determine its orientation and position in space. My blemish was not that. It was a red dot right about here on my upper lip, and it was intermittent in the sense that when I scrunched my face up in certain ways, it would go away, or if I made certain mouth movements, it would become more extreme. And so as a result, tracking it was very difficult. So instead, what I tracked was my nostrils. They are a part of my face that is always present. The dark holes of my nostrils are really easy to track. And so by tracking them and then using offsets and a little bit of like manual tweaking, I was able to figure out where I needed to move that little mask that I had created that hid my blemish. And overall, it was a very successful experiment. I think that it taught me a lot about some of these techniques, gave me some practical experience with how tracking works and doesn't work. And so all of that is to hopefully justify the fact that this was less an excursion of vanity and more something that I did because I wanted to accept that challenge. I knew that it was possible and I wanted to prove that I could do it myself. So this was a random video, I admit. I had a lot of fun. I'm kind of coming off of the high of summiting a problem yesterday and wanted to create a little video contextualizing my own upper lip PTSD with presumably the person who had to edit out Henry Cavill's mustache. I feel for that person deeply, wherever you are. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this and I thought it would be kind of a funky video concept. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Not apotamus. Ponderous.